What is up, everybody? It's Joe with J Blake Photo, and today I wanted to tell you about a new thing that I got that I'm super excited about. So this new fun toy shoots in 4K, 60 frames per second. It shoots in 1080p 240. It can be submerged in water, and it can connect live to Facebook and YouTube and broadcast video. So you're saying to yourself, yeah, we know, you got a GoPro. You just did like 3 videos about it. But I'm not talking about the GoPro. I'm talking about my iPhone. So now I have 2 cameras, both that have the ability to broadcast live, the ability to shoot in 4K 60, the ability to shoot at 1080p 240 super slow-mo. Both of them can be dunked in the water. So I thought it would be worthwhile to do kind of a head-to-head comparison between the two for a couple of specific areas. So first things first, I wanted to try it out, with video. So we're gonna do 4K 60 video quality test. Then we're gonna do the super slow-mo, and then we're gonna take a look at stills, shooting raw. Now I believe that both of these devices should get the best possible showing. So on the GoPro, I'm gonna be shooting in 4K 60 with the flat profile with Pro Tune turned on and specifically tweaked settings. And on the iPhone, I'm gonna be shooting with Filmic Pro, getting the highest amount of bitrate out of the iPhone camera. Now I am shooting with the iPhone XS Max. I'll keep it to the wide angle camera. And I'll keep the settings on the GoPro on the wide setting. Now I'm going to take some still photos, both with the GoPro and with the iPhone. My plan is to be shooting in RAW on both devices. Now one feature that the GoPro has that the iPhone definitely doesn't have is their new hyper smooth time-lapse function. It's kind of like a hyperlapse. It's actually really cool. And then last but not least, I really want to take a look at the slow-mo function that both of these have. One thing to note, the Filmic Pro log profile, the flat profile on that app, does not work at 60. So now we've got some 4K 60 footage, we've got some 1080p footage at 240 frames a second, and some still photos that we're gonna go pixel peep. So I'm gonna head back that way now, and we'll take a look. Okay, so I'm back in the office and I've reviewed the footage that we got with the GoPro and with the iPhone, and wow. I have some thoughts. Number one, the stabilization in the GoPro continues to blow me away. It is amazing. And even though the iPhone does have some built-in stabilization, it just cannot hold a candle to the hyper smooth that is going on inside the GoPro. Now I know that the field of view is pretty different between the GoPro and the iPhone. The GoPro is shooting with a much wider view there, but even just taking that into account and looking at the footage, the other thing that really comes to mind, other than the fact that the smoothness out of the GoPro is pretty phenomenal, is the fact that the iPhone sharpness and color reproduction is considerably better than what you're getting out of the GoPro. Now that may have something to do with the fact that I'm shooting the iPhone footage using the Filmic Pro app with their extreme setting. So I'm getting maximum bit depth, maximum megabits per second out of that sensor with that log profile. But I really wanted to make sure that I was maximizing the quality that I could get out of each camera. But having looked pretty closely at the footage out of the GoPro, I can say that the GoPro footage reminds me of what was coming out of the iPhone 7 Plus or the 10. It really is maybe one generation behind. So while the iPhone takes it in clarity and color, I'm gonna say that the GoPro definitely gets it in stabilization. Now moving on to photos, I thought we'd hop into Lightroom and take a look at those photos side by side. Okay, so we've got these images loaded up into Lightroom. I've got them side by side between their GoPro and iPhone counterparts. And the first image that we can see here is down in this kind of rough stone little creek bed here between these trees. And then you can see there's this retaining wall up here to the left. This shot was taken towards the middle of the day, so it's rather contrasty. This is not really the best time or place for taking photos like this, but just as an example, it's not too bad. You'll also notice that since I took this photo in Lightroom, in the Lightroom app on the iPhone, it has automatically done some correction. So you can see here that it has boosted the whites a little bit, it's dropped the blacks down, it's increased clarity, and that's more than likely to give it a kind of a more contrasty tone. I want to reset this, so I'm just going to right click in here and I'm going to go to develop settings. I'm just going to hit reset. Not a huge difference, but now we can see that this is a much flatter image. And the reason for that is that in this case, I'm not really looking to create an end result. I really want to look deep into this image and see how it did. And then I want to compare it against the GoPro version. The three things that I want to look at most are clarity, and then how it does in both highlight areas and in shadow or darker areas. So we'll start with clarity. I'm gonna zoom into one of these more kind of detailed areas here. If we zoom in on some of these rocks here, this is very sharp, very clear. And even though you have some out of focus elements way back here in the background, they are also rather sharp, which is pretty good. Okay, now I want to zoom in real close into this bright area here, just to see how well this camera does in brighter areas. Now again, this was shot raw, so we're not actually using any of the iPhone's technologies to improve their images, and what you can see is just a smidge of what looks like a little bit of green fringing, but honestly, for as bright as this was, it looks really good. Let's take another look into these darker shadowy areas. And what I want to do is I want to zoom this to 1:1, and then I want to bring up these shadows and then look really close at how well we were able to kind of bring them back. Is there a lot of noise? Looks like there's some color noise, but overall, very good. There's a little bit more of that green fringing. There's just a little bit of red fringing, it looks like. As we come up around the edges here, very, very nice, very good. Okay, I'm very happy with that photo. Not from an editing standpoint, but just from a general quality of, you know, what am I starting with? What am I going to be looking at straight out of the camera if I'm shooting raw? And that is a really good indication. Okay, so we're going to switch to the GoPro version of this same image. Now, right away, you can tell that this image was shot at a much, much wider angle. I'm actually going to go down here and I'm going to use the profile correction and set this to GoPro and set it to the 6 black. Okay, and that's going to give us just a little bit of that distortion kicked out, and we can see kind of where things are generally lined up. Okay, now looking at the GoPro image, this image has not been adjusted, so we're going to do the exact same thing. I want to zoom into some of these same areas here and see how we're doing from a clarity, from a sharpness perspective. So right away I can tell, and I'm just going to check to make sure that none of these, nope. So there's no noise reduction being applied here, but this looks like the sharpness / noise reduction sliders have been turned all the way up, that the detail sliders have been turned all the way up. These details look almost artificial. The sharpness looks artificial. It looks like there's just something else going on here. This is really strange. Look at these details. Let's see if we can't do a 1:1 here and just zoom in on that same rock. See if we can't find that same rock. Okay, so now switching between this rock and this rock, I mean, this is the same image, or same perspective rather. You can kind of see back and forth. There is so much more detail in the iPhone photo. I'm gonna bring up the shadows like we did on the iPhone and see how much more detail we have there. Okay, so we're definitely getting more shadow detail. And we'll go back again to see the difference. Again, look at the details in the rocks. While there's definitely some graininess and some noise in the iPhone version, when we go to the GoPro version, man, that is just weird. That texturing, that's just so strange. Okay, so moving on. I knew that this little bush would give us a little bit of difficulty, so I went ahead and photographed it both with the iPhone and with the GoPro. I'm gonna again reset this image by going to Develop Settings and Reset. Okay, and there's the iPhone version, and there is the GoPro version. Again, I'm not really worried about the wideness of the field of view. It doesn't really impact a lot of the things that we're looking at in terms of sharpness and in terms of color reproduction. So I'm gonna once again just try my best to correct for some of that by setting this to GoPro. Okay. So now we've got a good flat image here. Okay, now let's zoom in on the iPhone version. And it looks like we've got all of this, all these reeds, all of this is very well rendered. It looks like we've got a lot of fine detail here. Even great fine detail off here in the distance, off in the edges. Not a lot of fringing, not a lot of issues with clarity. Everything looks really good. I mean, it's not an exciting image, but it's sharp and it doesn't look overdone. And again, there's no correction on this image. So now if we switch to the GoPro version and we do the same thing, considerably less detail. And again, you can see where it looks like there's just been a lot of kind of artificial sharpening and detail added to this image. If I didn't know any better, I almost would say that it's not raw. It's like a cartoonish type of filter being applied to this. And if I turn off the profile correction, it doesn't get any better, so it's not that. But that is just, I mean, zoomed out it looks fine. You know, I wouldn't hesitate posting these on Facebook or something, but I wouldn't use this for stills, at least not like this. And now let's test out that shadow detail on the iPhone. I'm gonna bring that up, and everything looks super clean. Just everything looks so good. Now if we move over to the GoPro and we bring up those shadows, yeah, more detail definitely, especially down here in the rocks. We can see quite a bit more out of this image. It's added quite a little bit of dynamic range. We could bring down these blacks just to add a little bit more contrast. That sharpness, I just don't know what is going on there. Look at this rock. It looks painted. Man, that is crazy. Okay. All right, and moving on, last photo, a photo of the trail that I was walking down, this walking path here. So again, I'm going to take the, this one is actually the GoPro one, so I'm going to switch over to the iPhone, and I'm going to go to our develop settings and reset it, and go back to the GoPro, and I'm going to modify our profile so that we are on GoPro. Okay, now I'm going to concentrate mainly on the detail in this walkway. This was kind of a concrete, cobblestone-y type walkway here. So in the GoPro version, I can definitely see the detail. It's there. It doesn't seem to have that kind of cartoonish look to it, which is nice. And then if we go over to the iPhone version, honestly, it looks about the same. Both zoomed in 3:1. Honestly, I'm not seeing a considerable amount of difference. The only thing I'm really seeing is the fact that the GoPro seems to have a lot more chromatic issues, aberration, especially towards the edges here in this brighter scene. But otherwise, not too bad. Yeah, a lot of fringing, a lot of blue here, but that can be fixed in post. You can adjust that here in Lightroom. But really, looking at these, I don't see a considerable amount of difference. And then considering the fact that the texture down here doesn't seem to be super different, I would almost venture to guess that the iPhone is just doing better in that darker environment down here in the riverbed. You know, this was somewhat shaded, so it was definitely darker. So maybe the GoPro is just trying its hardest to fix issues with low light performance, whereas here in the brighter scene, the information, the data seems to really come out just fine. If we look at this tree down the way at 3:1 zoom, it doesn't look great, but it's definitely not too much different than how it's resolved in the GoPro version, considering the fact that we've got to zoom in a little bit more to get it the same in the frame. Not seeing a ton of difference. Next, taking a look at the slow-mo footage. Both of these cameras can shoot at 240 frames a second. Just as with the 4K footage, I'm going to say that the iPhone is definitely pulling out a sharper, crisper image with better color reproduction. I'm also noticing that the wide-angle camera on the GoPro causes it to be much more susceptible to light leaking and fringing from sunlight. When you've got a view that wide, there's a really high likelihood that you're going to get the sun in the shot. I was not getting the sun in the shot on the iPhone, and I noticed that it was looking a lot clearer. But even with that taken into account, I'm going to say that definitely the 240 frames out of the iPhone is clearer and has better color. That brings me to three things that the iPhone just doesn't have. Number one, it does not have that super awesome hyperlapse option. That was really amazing. I know there's apps out there that will do something like that, but I've never seen it straight out of the camera look that good. That was really phenomenal. I'm gonna try and get a little bit better at that, but those were fun. That got me really excited to add some of those to my upcoming projects. Number two is the fact that even though the iPhone is rated to be placed underwater, that's more of an accidental thing. I did on my trip to the Bahamas 2 years ago, I did take my iPhone 7 Plus at the time and I put it in a waterproof case and I swam underwater with it and got some decent footage. But the thing about the iPhone versus the GoPro, and this kind of takes us into my third and final thought, is the fact that if I lose my iPhone, it's a lot bigger than if I lose my GoPro. Don't get me wrong, I would hate to lose this thing. This is an investment, and it's not like it didn't cost anything at all, but it's a much bigger deal if I lose my phone. And I just trust that this thing is gonna do better underwater and in more extreme environments than my iPhone would, even with a case. But there is a huge cost difference here. So the GoPro Hero 7 Black is currently retailing for $400, although there are trade-in options available, and I'm sure discounts will be coming soon. I've got a link in the description if you want to buy one of these on Amazon. That's right down there. By the way, that helps support my channel if you do that. The iPhone can be anywhere between $800 and $1,400 new, depending on which model and the capacity that you purchase. Let me know down in the comments, is it the GoPro or is it the iPhone for you? Which do you think would be a better investment considering the information that I've given to you here? And while you're at it, go ahead and hit the like button on this video. If you like stuff like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to put out videos a couple of times a week. If you've got an idea for a video or something that you would like to see, go ahead and put that down in the comments. I've been getting a ton of comments recently about videos that folks want me to do, so I'm working on those, I promise. But let me know what you'd be interested in. Let me know what you want to see in 2019. Hit the subscribe button. If you hit the bell next to the subscribe button, it tells you when I put out new videos. There'll be a picture of my face right about here. If you click on that, it'll help you subscribe, and I'll put a playlist of some of my how-to videos, which are some of my more popular videos on my channel, if you're interested in learning something new. And I will see you in the next video.